If you're working in Adobe Aero, one thing you might want to include are 3D objects. And you could learn how to 3D model some of these things, but you can also find a lot of these models for free online, or maybe you know someone who can model and send you something. So what I'm going to do is go to Sketchfab, which is a place where you can download 3D models. They have a bunch of free models that you can search for just like this. And I'm going to grab some 3D models and see how I might import them, get them ready for Aero to use an augmented reality experience. So a few things to keep in mind when you look at some of these. You want to look at the file size for something like this. The ones that are really complex or maybe have really detailed textures, and I'm just kind of rotating around here, might be larger. And if you go down to here where it says more model information, you can see a few things like how big it is, the different file types that it comes with. So this actually has a Blender file, GLTF and GLB, and then this other one, USDZ. You can see the things that are really going to add file size are the mesh, if there's a lot of different triangles or quads, and also the textures. If there's textures that have images that are really big, that could also lead to a big file size. So this one again is 11 megabytes. That might be a little bit too big for using in the augmented reality Aero experience. Here's something that maybe is going to be, let's see, a little. Oh, this one's actually bigger, 30 megabytes. So you can see this. You can see the triangles and the quads. Here's another 3D model, and you can see some of these textures in here are really detailed. So if we go and look at this model information, you can see the mesh here, but also when you go into here, you can see some of the textures that are included, and you can see where the size is coming from. So these are JPEGs that are in PNGs that are being used on the model itself. One thing you could do is look up something like low poly, and I'm going to just get a few different things and show how to bring these into Blender and then get them ready for Adobe Aero. So low poly just means it's like there are fewer polygons, fewer triangles or quads, and generally it's going to be a little bit smaller. Again, look at the textures. Like this one, I'm sure is going to be pretty small because the textures are not that complex and there aren't that many quads. So there's only 416 triangles. You can see this is actually probably a really good size for us. So I'm going to look for low poly models that are free, and from here, I'm going to grab something like this one. I think will be relatively small. You can see the textures aren't that detailed. There's some gradients and minor shading, but you don't see the distress like dirt and things like that. And if we go into the model information, you can see it's 1 megabyte. So then there's just some textures here. And so to download this, we're going to just hit download 3D model, and you should see, you do need to log in here. Go and download this, and I can get different formats. Let me download a few just to show you. OBJ is a common 3D format, and then either one of these, GLTF or GLB. Let's do this one. Whoops. Okay, and now I'm going to open them up in Blender and take a look. In Blender, this is a new file. I'm just going to delete this cube. I hit X, and then I'm going to go into File, Import, and you can see the different file types that we can import. So let me start with that OBJ. Okay, so I've put the files in here. They came as zip files, and then I unzipped them. You'll see this is the OBJ, so I'm going to grab this and import that. Now, it didn't come in with the material file. We're going to need to attach that to this. So what happened is that there is a JPEG file or a texture that was associated with this, but it hasn't been connected to this. So one thing you'll want to do is attach that. I'm going to go and go to this mode. This is viewport shading, so I can see what it looks like. Then I'm going to go select this and this will bring up this material. But then we'll go into the shading window here. And so this is a node-based shading system. And what we'll want to do is connect that image file. So it's this is the folder that came in, this is the OBJ, and then this is the texture. And you can see this texture is what's called a UV unwrapped texture. It's like taking all the faces and they've been like laid out flat. And once we attach this to the 3D model and they're mapped to it, all of these textures should be mapped onto the 3D surface. So when we go into here, we're gonna hit Shift A to add, and then we're gonna go to texture, image texture. So we drop one node in here, and we wanna make sure this is connected, the color is connected to the base color, so we can click and drag. Right now, I think it's like a default color, but what we're gonna do is add that image onto here. Inside of here, we have the textures. This is the new texture. We're gonna open that image, and then you should see that that texture got mapped onto this. So let's go back to layout up here, and as we move around, that looks pretty good. So this is an OBJ, a file format that you might get, and to bring this into Adobe Aero, we're just gonna export this as a GLTF yellow car OBJ. Just going to export that. Now I'm going to import the other file, the GLTF. So import. This is the GLTF. Let's import that. When you import it in, if you see this, just make sure that you're in the right mode. This is just showing you the kind of, it's not showing you all the textures in here. So make sure you're on either this one up here or this one to actually see that it's there. But this one as a GLTF has come in all ready to go. Let's see if we can actually just use this from Adobe Aero. Here I am in Adobe Aero, and I'm going to start importing those 3D objects that I had. Here's the yellow car. And there we go. You can see it came in. It's pretty large, but I can scale it down. You know, and if we want to put a behavior on it, we could do that. So on the start, we'll maybe move it from here. And yeah, we can just, this is just adding a move. A little bit more. Okay, so that's one animation that we can do. And if we have that GLTF file that we downloaded, we actually don't even need to do anything to it. We can just go, this is that file I got from Sketchfab, and this should just open up. Yeah, same thing. So again, we could put an action in here. You know, so as it starts, it just kind of rotates a little bit. You can add it back and forth in here. All right, so we have one, this GLTF that we originally downloaded that's going to be rotating. The other one that started off as an OBJ that we converted to GLTF is going to be moving forwards. So here's some recordings of the augmented reality experience when I used it on my mobile app, and I just recorded this by turning my phone sideways. Again, you can do that to get a wide horizontal video. Now, if you have a 3D model that's pretty small, you might not need to do too much to it. So I'm going to download a statue. I was just looking at a few that were here. I think that this one might be good because it looks like it's going to be one mesh. It is a little bit large. If I look at this information, it's 26 megabytes. So I know I can probably make this smaller and optimize it for Adobe Aero. So I'm going to download the 3D model and I'll get this one, the GLTF. You can see it's 25 megabytes. And then let's bring this into Blender and see if we can get it to be smaller. All right, so I've opened up a new Blender scene. I'm going to delete this, and then I'm going to import that object. Here's the scene, import that. Okay, so that's been brought in, and again, if you want to see the textures, make sure that you switch the modes. There it is. We just want to switch the modes here. Again, we can see it with the lighting or just the material. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is, if we look at actually the wireframe, you can see that this is a very tight mesh, and so there's going to be a lot of data in here, and we probably don't need this much data for augmented reality. So what we can do is we'll open this up, and the reason I chose a statue here is because it looks like it's going to be one solid mesh. You can see that this is the mesh here. Sometimes with the other models, if it was a car or something, it might be a bunch of different meshes and then you need to join them together. I can show you what I mean in a little bit, but we'll select this mesh here, and then we'll look at the modifier here, modifier properties, and we're going to add in something called decimate. So this is going to let us make this mesh not as dense. If we change the ratio here, as we bring it down, you can see it becomes less dense. So we can see how that's looking. You can see there's slight changes, but I don't think it's going to really affect it too much. And you can see that we've actually reduced the mesh a lot. So let's say this is okay for what we're doing. There's maybe some imperfections, but when we're ready to accept this, we're going to go here, click this little arrow and say apply it. So now that's going to be applied to this mesh. The other thing that's making this file really large is the textures here. You can see this is 11.6 megabytes. This is that texture that's applied to it. So I'm actually going to go and change this texture because otherwise it's still going to be large. Maybe, again, this is a really nice texture, but maybe I can get away with something that's not quite as refined. Just kind of looking at performance here. So if I go click onto this, and I'll go to my materials, which is down here. You can see this is the texture that's applied to it. Let's maybe add a new texture. So hit plus, and then this is a new material. We'll get rid of this one, and let's say we're just trying to get something close to that original, like kind of greenish. So we're just selecting this, and there's more that we could go into with nodes and adding other textures, but I'm just gonna play with this really simple materials right here. So maybe we make it a little bit metallic, and then if we bring the roughness down, we should be able to kind of get a little bit of that shininess. And maybe that's okay for what we're doing. Let's see, there's some other pieces here, but I think this is probably okay. We just wanted to create something that's kind of similar. And then when I'm ready to export this, I'll just go to export. And I'll export that out. And yeah, now it's a lot smaller, and I can bring this into Adobe Aero. I've opened up Adobe Aero, and I'm gonna bring in that statue that I made, and you can see that loaded pretty quickly. I'm gonna just kind of maybe rotate this. I hit R to get this rotate button. Yeah, and maybe I'll make more than one. You hit E to get something to move. I'm just going to copy and paste that up here, so I have a few statues. Yeah, and that could be something that I try in AR. So here's the experience on the mobile app. I've taken this outside. I'm just recording a video. So the last example I wanted to show is using a more complex model that might have multiple meshes and showing some of the difficulties you might encounter. Hopefully you find a model that's easier to use. Maybe it's all one mesh, like the low poly card that I showed earlier, but I did want to show how you might go about doing this with something that's more complicated. The reason you'd want to do this is if your file is too large, it might take a long time for this to load in your scene. It might not really be practical. Okay, so there's different file types here, GLTF, and you can see 15 megabytes. That's going to be probably too large for Adobe Aero to handle easily. So I'm going to import this Porsche model, and you can see a few things. First, let me get rid of this cube, hit X to delete that, and you can see what this looks like. Again, if you want to see it with the textures on, oops, there you go. This is with the lighting applied to it. Okay, when we open this up, now this is not all one mesh. It's actually all of these pieces you can see are different meshes. So it's going to be a little bit more complicated to play with these. So one thing you could do is grab two of these if you want to combine them, and you could join them, and you could go through and do that to a bunch of these. This plus this, I'm hitting Command to select them and go to join, and you could go and do that. It's a little bit tedious, but maybe I'll just, again, I might not do the whole thing, but maybe just to show you for something like this, or let's say this. If we go to the wireframe, you can see that's probably too dense. And right now it's just, I'm just selecting this mesh, the part that's highlighted. You would go through and add another modifier, the decimate, and then you could bring this down. And so you could do something like that. You could see that probably is working all right. And then when you're ready, apply that. You also probably want to maybe change, like this paint material, I think is going to be really big. We could just add a new material here. You know, something that's like silverish. Really metallic, turn down the roughness. And you know, you can see once I change the modes here, this is, you know, it's pretty reflective, and it, you know, it might not have all these like imperfections in it, but it'll probably help us get this file size a little bit smaller. So again, the two things that we'll want to do are reduce the geometry, reduce the polygons or quads, triangles, and then optimize the textures, maybe add new textures that aren't reliant on large images. So that's, it's a little bit tedious, but you could go in and select just the windows and give those a color, or maybe just making everything one color would be probably the simplest thing. But yeah, at least that's a start. Obviously this would take a little bit longer, but I just wanted to show how you might go about doing that.